All right, let's discuss chapter 13, section 2. We're going to talk about Mendel, his pea plants, and his observation of inheritance patterns. So it's really important to understand that at this time, this was the 1800s or the 19th century, as it says in your textbook, that DNA was not known as the hereditary material, the molecule that was responsible for storing and transmitting genetic information. And at this time, people thought that the fluids, really is what they said, from both parents blended to give rise to the next generation, the children. So you have two parents, and then their children would be a blend of the two of them. However, this really didn't explain having offspring that have traits that weren't in both parents, say like freckles. That's said in your textbook. And genetics is not as simple as a blending of the two parents. So Mendel was a an Austrian monk, and he bred pea plants and kept very detailed records of his observations of the traits that the parents had and what the resulting offspring had, and even what their resulting offspring had, so we can compare from one generation to the next. So I'm going to bring up this picture here. I don't know how well this is going to pop up. It's not as big as I would like. Let's do this instead. So, first of all, you have to understand that the pea plants, so we're looking at a pea plant right here, have male and female parts on their flowers. So the carpel and the anther. So the carpel has the or produces the female gametes, the egg, whereas the anther produces the pollen or the sperm. And what he had to do to prevent the flowers from self-fertilizing was he removed the anther, the male part, and then he took pollen from another flower and brushed it on the carpel to pollinate it from somewhere else. So in this example here on the screen, it's showing you a purple flower and a white flower. And he took the pollen in this example, took pollen from a purple flower and pollinated a white flower. And then as the seeds develop, these are going to be the peas. He's going to take those and then he's going to plant those. And what he saw was that they were all purple. And this is just one of many different experiments that he started to do. There's color of the peas themselves, the pea pods. The peas are wrinkled or round, if the plants are tall or short. But we're going to get a little bit more into some terms and definitions here in a few minutes. But his careful tracking, his careful notes, his careful observations led him to conclude that this hereditary information is passed from one generation to the next in these units that might not be seen right away. So as the instance, we're going to find like this purple and this white plant, or purple and white flower being crossed. And yes, all the resulting offspring, are going to be, in this example, are purple. But why is that? Why doesn't the white show up? And like I said, we're going to get to that here in a moment. Let me make this smaller again. And so he discovered these hereditary units, which we call genes. And if you remember, we talked about genes before. We said genes are a section of DNA that code for a protein. I know I super simplified before when I said genetics really comes down to the proteins that are and are not made. And I think we've even discussed the position on a chromosome that a gene is located is called a locus. And you can see in this picture here, these little sections are different parts of these chromosomes that code for different proteins, but these are different genes, and these are their locations of these genes. You can see I'm a underline this one here on this chromosome. This says the ABO blood group, so this would be for blood type. There's different ones for like Duchenne muscular dystrophy right here, or hemophilia. This is on the X chromosome. These are X-linked traits, which we'll get to. So what happens is you can inherit, you do inherit different alleles. Remember, alleles were types of, or different forms of genes. So we're going to talk about it in terms of being dominant or recessive. So dominant is the stronger one, recessive is the weaker one. And if somebody is homozygous for a particular trait, that means they have two copies of the same allele, either two dominant or two recessive. And I'm going to put up a PowerPoint that has these vocabulary terms illustrated a little bit better for you so that you can see them. So homozygous, the prefix homo means same. So same. So if we say homozygous dominant, then this individual has two copies of that. Homozygous recessive, two copies of the recessive. Homozygous dominant, two copies of the dominant. Whereas heterozygous, hetero means different or mixed. The person will have two different alleles. They'll have one dominant and one recessive. And then we talk about hybrid being a cross between matings that breed true for different traits. So heterozygous is often called a hybrid, and you can look at these vocabulary words here. Genotype refers to the gene. Phenotype is the physical trait. So when we talked about white flower versus purple flower, that's the phenotype. Tall versus short, phenotype. If you're talking about your blood type, if you know that you have type A blood or type O blood, that's your phenotype. And we're going to get into a little bit more of this in my next video as far as the terminology to kind of help you out. But I do want to show this picture here because it does kind of break it down. So homozygous dominant in the top part here. So homozygous dominant, we're showing with two capital P's, meaning that this flower has two dominant alleles. Its phenotype is going to be purple. Homozygous recessive, meaning it has two recessive, two little p's, in this case, how we write it. And it's going to be the white flower. And then if it's heterozygous, it has one big and one little, one dominant, one recessive. And it's still going to show that dominant phenotype because as long as it has one, it's still dominant. Let me clear that out. Let's see. I think I'm going to do a different video to kind of go on with this, with the vocab, because the vocab for this is very important. If you don't get the vocab, it's hard to understand what the questions are going to be asking, and this is going to be on your next exam. So it's important that you understand these vocab words.